Hi there, and welcome to the Anita CHAT podcast. I'm your host, Anita Rombo, and this is the podcast for growth-oriented women to have authentic, real talk. Nothing is off the table here, but as an intuitive self-relationship coach, you'll find the content gravitates towards mindset, intentional action, spirituality, and all things wellness. So if you're ready to learn, laugh, show up, and glow up to be the best version of yourself, grab your favorite bevy, settle in, and we've got lots to chat about. Hello and welcome to another episode of Anita Chat. I hope you are doing well. Today I am so excited to welcome Courtney Anderson to the chat. Courtney is a sober coach, a fellow podcast host, and an author, and she is our personal sober cheerleader. Courtney actually founded National Sober Day and Sober Vibes, the online community for sober and sober curious women. So Courtney, welcome to the chat.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you for having me on. I'm very excited to chat with you today.
I am so excited to chat with you. First of all, you have done so many amazing things. And I just wanted to thank you for all of that great work that you've done to create a community around people who are interested in pursuing a sober lifestyle and empowering women and individuals to be their authentic selves. If that looks like being sober, that's great.
Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. And I'm just, I'm happy that it's able to help other people along their journey. So
absolutely. Why don't we get started? I want to know more about you. And could you share your story with us?
Sure. So what got me down this path of why I have created what I created was because I too had a problem with alcohol. So from 19 to 29, I was in it. I often refer to it as a very toxic relationship that I had with alcohol. And from 25 to 29, I tried moderating. I tried making a bunch of rules around my drinking, like, oh, I won't have any shots. I won't mix alcohol. Better make sure I eat, because God knows that's the problem of why I continue to black out and act an animal in these moments of drunkenness. And it wasn't. It was because I had a problem with alcohol. I was an alcoholic. And at 29, I was about 6 weeks away from being 30. 29, I lost my cat. My last night of drinking, I lost my cat, my rescue cat, for a second time. And I pissed off my boyfriend, my live-in boyfriend. And it just came to the point the next day I woke up, I was told about my cat missing for the second time. And my boyfriend at the time, he said, you can keep doing this. You can keep drinking. He was like, but I'm not going to stick around for this ride. So for 3 days, my cat stayed missing. I had the worst hangover of my life because it was a combination of a compound effect of all the years of the shame and just being very, very, very hungover and in that guilt, that can keep so many of us stuck. And the third day I found my cat Fiona, which she's still here with us today. And I made a pact when I was in that 3-day process. And I was like, if I find fur pants, I will give up drinking for good, because I knew at 25, I knew I was going to have to give up alcohol for good. That's kind of why that 4-year moderation I tried fitting alcohol into my life and it just wasn't. So I found Fiona. I continued to make that pact and that deal with the universe. And here I am today. That then boyfriend is now my husband. We have an 18-month-old. And like I said, Fiona's still with us. And in the process of my recovery, that came Sober Vibes. So that's my story.
Wow. And I'm so happy to hear that things worked out really well for you, and that your boyfriend is now your husband and you have a baby. And I don't know, that's a really lovely story. So talk to me a little bit about, you knew there was a 4-year of a trial, making it fit. How did you know? What were some of the clues that there was a problem that you maybe weren't facing head on, or you thought maybe through moderating it would?
Well, I thought through moderating it that it could somehow reverse to not being a problem. And that's not the truth. At 25, I knew. Up to the point from 19 to 25, my drinking got worse. And when I say it got worse, it became more and more problematic. Blacking out happened on a regular basis. 90% of the time that I drank, something would have happened, whether I got into a fight with girlfriends, relationships destroyed, opportunities destroyed, a couple stints in waking up in a hospital bed. I woke up in jail one time in the drunk tank. So it just added up to. I don't ever regret, though, any of my drinking days, because I have to not, like I said, 90% of the time it was terrible. But 10%, I can look back and be like, oh, I have a good memory associated with that, like going to a concert. I'm never going to pretend that my drinking didn't happen, because if I pretend it never happened, it will never keep me sober. So at 25, I had woken up after a night and just like, I just knew. I think anybody with a problem with drugs, alcohol, gambling, porn addiction, shopping addiction, anything like that, I think we all know intuitively there's a problem, and our gut is telling us like, you're going to need to quit drinking, or you're going to need to stop gambling, something like that. It's past the point of no return. So from 25 to 29, I tried fooling myself.
Yeah, so you spoke to the inner knowing, and I think that that's important because we all have intuition. So I'm a soul strategist and success coach, and so the soul piece in me is all about tapping into that intuition, that inner knowing. And the reason why, Courtney, I am so drawn to your story is, one, I can relate to it on many different levels. I too was born in a house with a parent that struggled with sobriety and is managing a sober life now, and it's lovely to see the growth and the evolution of that journey. But we were all part of that journey together, and there's a lot of feels, a lot of emotions, a lot of intuition that was not being acknowledged at different times. So and I think with women, especially kind of in our season of life, we have this thing called mommy wine culture, and that really normalizes drinking. And if you're not drinking at a party, all of a sudden you'll be bombarded with questions about are you expecting? It just can't be that you just are deciding not to. Like there's got to be some sort of explanation around it. So let's talk about some of those kinds of challenges. Why is sober living challenging in your mind?
In my mind, why sober living is challenging, it's because of how embedded alcohol is into the society, and how, and for many, many years, there was only 1 to 2 avenues of getting help. And that was through 12-step programs or rehab. Well, if you do not or didn't have the funds, I'm sure some insurances pick it up now, but rehabs are very expensive. And not everybody vibes with the 12-step program. So like, what else is your avenue of support, right? So that's one option, which is cool now in these times, that there's other avenues of support to help you in your journey of sobriety. Going back though to it being so embedded and ingrained in our culture, I mean, alcohol is the only drug you don't have to explain. Or the only drug you have to explain why you're not using it. That's how threaded it is into so many cultures, not just the United States, all over the world, and how you grew up, what your family dynamic is, how you saw alcohol like that. Like how I saw alcohol growing up was you celebrated with it. You had a bad day, good day, whatever, cocktail you needed a cocktail. It was always cocktail, wine o'clock, 5 o'clock somewhere. That culture was heavy in my family. So it's hard. It's not easy because at the end of the day, it is an addiction. Alcohol is a very addictive substance. And again, then you start getting people around you in your own family dynamic, friend circle or whatnot, where you were enabled and people enabled you, and people still continue to enable you. You could be married to someone where it's just like they enable you so much you don't even see it. Or you do, and you know it, and you can manipulate that situation. So there's just so many, but I have to say my 1 and 2, it's because it is hard and it's a conscious every day, I'm going to live life without alcohol, and 2, and how embedded and ingrained it is in our society today. Like how ignorant is it though, that that's the only reason a woman would turn down alcohol is
100%.
if she was pregnant. I mean, many women don't even want kids. So one, how insulting. Like, and just very ignorant. But and through the years, and this is why about 30 days of me being sober, I started talking about it out loud, because for so many years, we're talking decades, even in the recovery and the sobriety process, you were it was hush hush. It was, and this isn't a knock towards 12 steps, but this is how it was, because it's still going back to the 1940s when it was founded by two white Baptist men, that it was hush hush culture. So it still is. And to respect people's, to respect people's privacy, and which I get. But at what point do we just start, like, let's talk about this and normalize it? Because millions have problems with alcohol. So like, so people who are normal drinkers, maybe they're the problem. And people who have the problem with alcohol it isn't a big issue. So, but that's just how it's looked upon in our culture. And the hush hush of it all hasn't done people, I don't think it's been done a big service to people.
I agree. I think the biggest thing that we have is our voices, right? And we could use that voice to educate, to empower, to inspire, to give hope to people, and also to shed light on where problems exist, right? So the first thing is to normalize it, that maybe somebody has an issue or not. It's up to the individual to hit their point of knowing, listening to their inner knowing, when you alluded to it as well, right? Like, you had to get to a certain point, if you want to call it a rock bottom, what have you, before you were able to open your eyes to it and say, okay, now these moderations are not going to work. I got to just do the thing, right?
Yes.
So can we talk a little bit about the enablers in our life? Because they could be our friends, they could be our partners. I want to know more about that and your take on that, but specifically, if you can, like, in relation to yourself. So it looked like your now husband was a big supporter of you, and he called a spade and said, this is not going to work. How did your relationship change as a result of the transitions that you made? And can you speak to that a little bit?
So, and I want to say, if people are listening, and I know people are listening, but if you are an enabler, it doesn't make you a bad person. It's just strictly, you don't know what else to do. And some people think by enabling somebody, it's like supporting and helping them, and like you can control them, and you can't. But that's why there's so many layers to this topic of addiction and alcoholism, or alcohol use disorder. That's kind of the term that's going on now, because alcoholism is that term's being a little bit more outdated. So, and under that, then there lies codependency. So, and that could just be something you could have watched your parents, you could have watched your mom enable your father, 100%. Or vice versa. And then you're living that. It's no surprise then you attracted in a drinker into your life. So the enabling, if you do it, give yourself grace right now. But at some point you have to figure out, like, is this overstepping my boundaries? Is this exhausting me? Do I want to keep feeling this way? Because I'm sure as an enabler, you feel really bad. So Matt did give me that choice. Matt, and a lot of people are like, well, that's an ultimatum. You're not really you didn't quit for yourself. And it was like, no, I did, because I knew for 4 years. What he presented to me and what my cat presented to me was ultimately my spiritual experience that I witnessed on that third day. But he presented to me that some people, nobody else did. No one else. I had spent years, and in my family dynamic, there is much addiction issues in my family dynamic. So none of my family really could speak upon that, because then their behavior would have had to be in question too, right? So then my friend group, people loved going out with me until midnight, when I turned into a gremlin, and there was like no point of return, But so friendships were always like some friendships I would fall out with, but then in a couple months come back to. So nobody ever was like, I'm leaving. You can keep doing this if this is the life that you want to live. And we had been living together. It was 1.5 years we were together at that time. And it just presented me that day where I'm like, this is enough. So On the flip side of that, Matt also quit drinking. Matt didn't have a problem. Matt was to the point where he would have 2 drinks and the next day he felt like garbage. He would have a very bad hangover. Plus 2, he also grew up with alcoholism surrounding him. So by the time the man got to 30, he was tired. He didn't want to keep dating women with alcohol problems, which I don't blame him. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that unless you both have problems with substances. So then it was like our relationship had to start over at day 1 because we knew what was there for a year and a half and what our social life consisted of, even to what our sexual life consisted of, because, I was a lot more looser when it came to sex and being drunk. That's a whole nother topic, a whole nother day, but you can get past it. So we had to really rebuild our relationship a year and a half in and start new and really start a solid foundation. And that's what him and I talked about a lot. Like, we did not want our future children to grow up in our home with alcohol being the center. And thank God it will never be that case. So yeah, so our relationship changed. It took work. A lot of work.
And on that note, again, as a soul strategist, I'm all about doing the deep work. And I've served clients that are on their sobriety journey and it's all about connecting to who you are authentically. And a lot of them are at this point where they've made this decision and they don't know who they are without the alcohol. And so you kind of alluded to the fact that you guys had to find your way in a relationship without alcohol, but you also had your own journeys of finding yourselves without alcohol. Can you talk to that a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a wake up, but you realize how much alcohol plays in a social life, So we both did separate therapy, couples therapy within time, not right off the bat. My main focus was that year of like just not drinking that day, right? So him and I had to do work, and I dug deep into personal development, eventually with getting back into therapy. I did therapy prior. But that therapist, I remember the second to last session I had with her, she was like, "Do you ever think about giving up alcohol?" And I was like, "Oh, we're done here." She called me out. She knew it. So digging into that, we had to figure it out of what it was going to look like, even by just simply what was our date nights going to look like to go out, and for a while it was like 4 o'clock, we would go out to eat because I didn't want to be out past a certain point because it was triggering for me. So you have to be very, very kind with one another and patient. That's and that is like, in looking back at it, we both had, he had more patience with me just because my emotions were so high in that first year. But, still to this day, because nobody's perfect, but if there's something that has bothered me, I'm always just like, it's okay. I'm just saying, like, in a part with him where it's like, when I say it's okay, because in the greater scheme of things, the good outweighed the bad, because it's very easy just, as living with somebody and being together for like 12 years, it's very easy to get into and then adjustment with having a child, looking at the bad compared to looking at the good. So I always just am thinking, it's like I always have it at the forefront. Matt is a very patient, loving, supportive man. So if he's a little bit grumpy today, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. So it's just patience and kindness, and really though, working on yourselves and then coming back as one.
Yeah. And the work on yourself is a lifelong thing. It doesn't matter what challenges you're traversing in life. Like, we're continuing to evolve to life circumstances as part of our growth. So your growth was just catapulted by this big decision that you made. And sometimes, like, it could have gone the other way with you guys too, right? Like, you guys could have discovered who you were, gotten to the root of it, and discovered maybe that was the crutch that you had in common and you're no longer compatible. It could have gone so many different ways. But it's nice that you continue to grow together. So
yeah, I mean, Matt and I are completely opposite people, but
so are me and my husband.
Yeah, completely. And sometimes I'm like, does that work? Like, Matt is very introverted. I'm extrovert, introvert, but like Matt could be fine just talking to one person for like a whole week. where I like it. But it just, it worked because there was love in, as you know, too, with marriage or relationship, it's a partnership. So, I mean, we definitely, that getting sober together was, honestly, forget that year and a half before, but that starting at day one, that was our foundation, and that trust in one another.
So what was the hardest part for you in your sobriety journey?
Oh, the hardest part actually is probably that first year. That first year, definitely, of just getting through each day, right? And telling yourself, you're not going to drink alcohol that day, getting through those triggers. And another thing that was very hard was waking up to see, when you gain so much clarity, because you gain a lot of clarity and within different parts, because now I'm 10 and a half years sober. Throughout the years, I've looked at things so differently, where I'm like, because then you kind of have to reflect back and be like, was this like this the whole time? And I didn't see it because I was drunk for a decade and loved drugs. Like, what? And you have to question some of the stuff, like with family dynamics, with how you are a person, with reacting to situations, how you cope with your emotions. And a lot of that too, coping with my emotions, is what, I coped with alcohol and drugs. So, you really, it's the clarity and waking up to that and seeing that things weren't cool when you thought they were cool, and that first year, and then grieving alcohol in the life that you once had. So.
You raised another really great point. I'm just enjoying this conversation so much.
Nice.
You talked about the emotional aspect of it, and sometimes using alcohol or drugs or other addictions to mask emotions, right? Yes. Or to hide yourself from emotions, or to maybe even deal with mental health issues. I don't think that we talk about mental health issues enough, especially after coming out of the pandemic. We're finally talking about it a bit more. What are your thoughts on alcohol use and mental health issues in general, and also as it relates to women?
So this is what I've learned. A lot of people who use alcohol have mental health issues. So the alcohol helps with that. But let me do air quotes, helps with that. It doesn't. All it does is make it worse and intensifies it times 1,000. So if you have any type of anxiety, depression, bipolar, you should never be drinking alcohol at all. Women who have children, that first year of that child's life, and I can speak to this because I just came out of it, shouldn't touch alcohol. But this is where this is where it goes back to this all being embedded and ingrained in our society, because you have big alcohol companies who push towards women. You have businesses, that is how they make more money. And I know that because I was in the restaurant industry for so many years, and I actually went back to sober bartending in my sobriety so I could grow my coaching business. Businesses make money when they sell alcohol because they can charge more. So like a fifth might cost you for the bar, I don't know, $15 to $20, and then they sell a shot of that for $5. So it's hard because big alcohol, people make money off of alcohol. This is where it's no different than the medical. I mean, it's the medical field, big pharma, like all of that. All of it, that there's money that people are making millions and billions of dollars feeding people in their addictions. So it's hard to speak upon that, but it's tough. So the mental health, it's like, okay, if people stop drinking and using, where's this money? It's a system where they want people to continue to be sick.
And it's also glamorized, right?
Yeah.
All of the media is like, you're living your best life. There's usually a cocktail in your hand, or there's usually a happy hour involved. So we all have this glamorized view of like us being happy, equating happy with a drink in our hand. And if you're dealing with anxiety and depression, you want to get happy. And so you're going to compensate and do what you think is going to bring it to you. But to your point, it's a vicious spiral. And I know that also firsthand. And it's hard to break out of that cycle. But when you do, and you can be removed from it, then I think you can really appreciate just how toxic it all is.
Yeah. And I have to say to this, and some people might disagree, happiness is a choice. Happiness is a choice. So like the work that we've been talking about doing, I still to this day, because I have depression and anxiety issues, I have to and have had, I haven't stayed 10 years sober just because I didn't do anything. Like I've had to work very hard and every day have tools in my tool belt to continue to progress, and to choose to be happy.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so that mental health one, because it doesn't get talked about like it should, and then people are like, oh my God, you have depression, you have anxiety, oh my God, you have an issue with alcohol, I would have never known. No.
I agree. I cannot overemphasize the fact that it takes work and it's a choice. And there's so many people that even with respect to this podcast or with respect to my coaching business, I get a lot of feedback of people like supporting me, empowering me, like just loving it, but acknowledging I don't want to do the work. It makes me uncomfortable. Some of the things you say make it uncomfortable for me. And it's because it's the truth. And sometimes the truth can be very uncomfortable if you're trying to mask it, if you're trying to be somebody that you're not, doing that work and really getting to the bottom of who you are and then making it a choice to like, do you want to embody that? Or do you want to embody a different version of you? You have a choice, right?
Yeah.
Doing the deep work is hard stuff. It's not for the faint of heart. So on that note, if somebody has decided that they want to do that deep work, specifically in relation to alcohol use, they've decided that they want to be sober. Do you have any tips for them to thrive in sobriety?
Oh my God, yes. Well, one, I always suggest talking to your doctor before you stop drinking, because you have to emphasize on that alcohol to withdraw from. But I don't want this to scare anybody to be like, oh my God, I'm never going to do this because I'm going to, suffer from withdrawals, because withdrawing from alcohol can be a dangerous thing. Okay. So talk with your doctor. There's no shame in talking with your doctor about this. Doctors like honesty. Just be honest. So talk with your doctor about quitting drinking alcohol, because you might, and be honest of how much you drank, because I can't sit there and you're going to tell me 5 drinks and you could be sitting there chugging 25 to 30 a week. I used to do that. So talk with the doctor about withdrawing for quitting alcohol first. And every day wake up and say, I'm grateful to be living another day sober. You have to live in gratitude with this, with taking it one day at a time. I did that for a year. I didn't even write this down. Every morning I woke up, I was like, thank you for another day sober. And it kept me, before getting out of bed, it kept me in like, okay, I'm going to do this. I got another day down. Each day I woke up, it's like, okay, another day down. Like, and it became easier and easier and easier to breathe and to continue forward. Another tip too is always remember your why. And these really will help you thrive in sobriety, because you have to anchor why you are quitting drinking alcohol, and like embed it into your mind of what is your why. So for when times get tough, you actually can sit there and be like, okay, I need to recite this out loud. Write it down in a couple places, put it on a Post-it note, journal it out, read it before you go to bed, so it's buried in your subconscious mind. Play it record it into your phone on a voice note and listen to it back. But why are you quitting drinking alcohol? Not why you started drinking, because that's a whole nother thing for down the road, but like why. Remember, connect to yourself a couple times a month of one of your most horrible drinking experiences, one of your most hangovers, because that's going to anchor you to keep moving forward. Get yourself into that place of like when you woke up and you were dry heaving on yourself, or maybe it was the shame that you felt when your kids looked you in the eye the next morning and been like, Mommy, what was wrong with you last night? or waking up if you fell. All of these things happen to people, where you wake up and you don't understand why you got that black eye or all those bruises on your legs. And all you can remember is drinking a couple bottles of wine, and there's hours upon hours missing in that night before. So connect with your why, remember it, write it down, find yourself a support, find yourself support outside of the home, because inside the home, like we talked about, it could have been an enabler. You actually could be in a relationship where all you guys do is drink together. And that's what brought you together in the first place. And you decide to quit drinking, and your spouse or partner is like, well, I'm still going to drink. And you don't know how to talk to that person anymore or share your feelings, or they're not listening. So getting support outside of the house is key. Key. And you can find that through 12-step programs. You can connect with me at Sober Vibes. I have many different options. You can just go on Instagram, type in sober, and watch all of these accounts that come out. Same thing with podcasts. There's so many podcasts that talk about sobriety and recovery and addiction. So gratitude, connecting to your why, and getting yourself support outside of the house. And talking with your doctor first, but I think that those are good places to start. And just remembering it's just one day at a time. Don't start thinking about like your sister's wedding in Italy. It's 4 years down the road when your sister doesn't even have a partner or engaged. It's very easy to future trip. You can't. You just got to be like, I have to take this one day at a time. When I quit drinking, I did not have a plan. I did not have all these plans of like, how's it going to be? It was me. I had to be like, okay, Matt didn't understand my love for alcohol. So I just, every day, I'm going to not drink today. Thank you for another day sober. And I figured it out as I went.
I love those tips. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Welcome.
I really, really like the one where you're showing gratitude and like
Yes.
securing your intention in gratitude, because it really is a gift. And if you've made that decision, then I think you maybe have hit that rock bottom, and you can appreciate the bigness of this decision and the bigness of this gift that you've been kind of given a second chance to try again, right? Or a third or a fourth. Sometimes we fail, right?
Yeah. And that's the whole thing and that's where this is hard too. Because relapse is a part of many people's stories. Like I said, everybody's like, so you haven't drank in 10 years? It's like, well, I know, but I tried for 4 years before I finally just was like, me and alcohol, I cannot have one sip of alcohol because I know where that first sip goes. So I'm not even going to entertain any idea of drinking it. So that is really important to know that if you do relapse, you're not a failure, because you're going to keep trying. And if you keep trying, you do not give up.
As long as you are trying,
yes.
You are winning.
Yes, exactly. Right.
Yeah. Okay. So you, my friend, are somebody that has done something I have never met anyone do. So I'm curious. You founded a national day. How did you found National Sober Day? Congratulations, first of all. Again, just a testament to your commitment to your mission. And I think it's a beautiful mission. Tell me, how does one go about founding a day? And like, what made you want to do this and all of the things? Go for it.
So I actually got the idea. I was watching I love Bravo television. Okay. Those are like my stories at nighttime. I like I love personal development, and I love Bravo TV. So I was watching a show, and one of the characters, one of the reality stars, founded Outfit of the Day. And she was sitting there in her interview talking about this. And I was like, and it just clicked. I was like, oh my God, this is how people do it. Cause I've heard of like National Donut Day, National Margarita Day, National Pizza Day. So in that, I was like, do they have a National Sober Day? So the next morning I get up, I go to the computer, I find the website that she was talking about, the business, and I submitted it. Because you have to submit it. So I picked a day, which is September 14th, and September 14th, both of National Recovery Month is September. So I wanted to honor it in National Recovery Month. And September 14th is actually the day both my grandmothers passed away. Different years, same day. So I really wanted to honor them because one of my grandmothers quit drinking when my oldest brother was born, and the other volunteered at the American Red Cross for about 35 years. So both women showed me great strength, and I loved them both dearly. So I picked September 14th. And the woman came back and she was like, that day is yours. And I paid for it. And in the email, I was like, I cannot believe no one has come up with this yet. And she's like, I can't either.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I thought it would be like I hear a lot about dry January. So I just kind of thought January would be the recovery month or.
No, September. So dry January and sober October aren't,
Oh, I never heard of sober October.
Yeah, or like now there's dry July. So those aren't like nationally recognized of like, going through this business and paying for it and whatnot. And I didn't want to do it in those. I am not a person who, and I've actually turned down brand deals too for this, to support that. If that's how you got sober, wonderful. But I come from a place, and this is just my opinion, that any day is a good day to get sober. I've just worked with too many people or have heard too many stories where then people think of it as a failure because they couldn't complete that. And it's like, okay, here's 30 days, because going back to drinking is a reward system. Like, I'm done at January 30th or 31st, however many days are in January, but now it's time I can drink. And then you're just going back to where you stopped. So yeah. So I
resonate with that philosophy for sure.
Yeah.
Any day is a good day to make change. Right?
Any day is a good day.
To push yourself out of your comfort zone.
Right. And with National Sober Day, behind it was this celebration, even though you should celebrate your sobriety every day, but celebration of sobriety. And also if you have family members who could be like, all right, cool, I won't drink today. So I wanted to bring more awareness to addiction, sobriety, and recovery, and that it's a celebration. And people who are kind of in the shadows of being hush hush and quiet and don't understand that there is people talking about it, that there's that. And to see, if you just look up the hashtag National Sober Day on Instagram, everybody who shares their sobriety. So it's more national coverage and a celebration.
I love it. Mm-hmm. Well, Courtney, thank you so much for coming onto the chat today and sharing your story and sharing some really great tips. It was really lovely to meet you, and I hope that we get to stay in touch. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on today.
My pleasure. And that's it. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.